G'day everyone. Well, I'm back after an amazing 2 weeks or so in Thailand, Phuket. I hope you've been following me. Please say hi in the chat if you actually are watching. I'm just going to say hi to everyone. Just so I know who's there. Oop, better turn that off. So I'm going to give this around about 5 minutes just to get everyone on board, and then we'll start. So if you are actually watching this a little bit later, you might want to skip 5 minutes ahead until you see the A7III images sign, and that's where we'll start today's show from. So apart from that, if you are actually watching now, I notice there's a lot now starting to come over. Please say hi. It's been a while. I'd love to know what you're thinking. I've got a few things to sort of discuss with you today, like the A7III rumours that are out there and things like that. So I'm looking forward to having a chat with you guys because it has been a couple of weeks since I've spoken to you. Excuse me. Just let me bring up the chat. So we've got Tom popping in at the moment. Hamroz, Video Master's here. Love you too, Video Master. Alan Andrews is here. Mike Theobald's here. Rush Fan is also here. So we're getting a stack now starting to say hi. A7II coming on Monday. You mean A7III, Mike? I suppose you're talking about. Well, let's keep our fingers crossed. I'm going to have a good talk about that too and see what you guys think it's going to be. So we'll have a talk about that as the first story, actually. We're going to go through that once we actually start. Stuart's here. Good evening from Gulf Breeze in Florida. Hi, Stuart. How are you? Like I said, I've had a great holiday or vacation, as you say in the US. It's holiday, we say here in Australia. I have put a number of videos up basically using the A9. So I wanted to talk about that with you guys, but I'm going to do it as a separate video. I think I might discuss how that went in a separate video and post that as a separate one, but just as a sort of sneak peek on how it all went. If you haven't looked at the last two videos I've posted, or the last, well, it wasn't the last one was a model shoot, but the two before that, I did one which was just using the A9 for stills, and then I also did one for the A9 for video. I can't state to you how much I adored using the A9 on holiday. I only took 3 lenses, which was the 35 2.8, I took the 35 1.4 and the 85 Batis. I did take a wide angle as well, the 10 to 18, in case if I needed to use it on a gimbal, but I didn't actually use it. But the 35 f2.8 I just used for the gimbal work that I did on that video. So anything where you're looking at the gimbal on that video on the A9, it was using the 35 f2.8. But what an amazing combo. I mean, I just can't say how much I loved using it. It worked fantastic on the gimbal too. The autofocus on that camera is nuts. The low light on that camera too was insane. It works so well for me. But I'd love you to have a look at those two videos and let me know what you think. I actually am starting to think that the A9 is very underrated in its video capabilities. I hadn't used it much before because I've got the GH5 and I've also got the A9 and the A6500 and the A6300. I hadn't used the A9 that much, but to be honest, I'm astounded by how well it went. Check how sharp the image is, particularly when I'm at the beach walking towards the camera, the focus that it locks onto me, things like that. G'day David, how are you? But check that out because it's amazing. Yes, it doesn't have profiles, the flat profiles, but to be honest, I think I can get away with it, and I'm tempted to use that camera more and more now just for its focusing, and actually, to be honest, the quality of it is just so beautiful. There was, very little or almost no rolling shutter, things like that. It just works so well, but let me know what you think. Some of the shots that I shot, particularly the girl, which I'll bring up just to show you guys, because I'd love to actually show that. Let me bring it up at the beginning. I'll just open up a new window. Because the thing was, it was very backlit. So, and it never failed me once in the way that it actually worked. But I'm just going to bring this up while we're sort of waiting for everyone to join us until past. Now, I'm going to open this video up in a second. All right, so, and I'll explain basically what's going on here. Now, this was really interesting because this actual shoot, I saw this gorgeous girl. She was a stunning she was actually a Russian, and Thailand for some reason at this time of year was full of Russians, and I'm not quite certain why, but it must be the time of year that they choose to go. I nearly always just go at Christmas, to be honest, and New Year. So this was a month later than we usually went. So it was really full of Russians, which is really interesting. But I saw this girl sitting by the pool. She had amazing hair, and I immediately thought I'd love to use her in the opening of this video because her hair was stunning, and you know, it was the best thing I ever did because I just went up to her, very little English language, and we tried to communicate, and I showed her my business cards and my YouTube channel, so she knew that I wasn't a creep. She knew that I was serious about doing this, and I promised her I'd send her the images that I took in the video, and I have done that. And what I asked her to do was basically just stand by the rail there and then just move her hair reasonably fast and flick it around so that I could get the nice slow motion. So I shot this in 50p, and then obviously when I went to Final Cut, I slowed it down 50%. And it gives you this type of look, and I'll show it to you. I'll play it now so you can see what she did. So you can see there that she's just flicking the hair around. I mean, it's beautiful. I couldn't have asked her to do it any better. I was just so rapt when I saw the image on the actual files when I looked at them. And just to show you sort of here, like how sharp, I mean, you may not see it because you're looking at YouTube itself here as well, but how sharp that this camera was, and you know, the way it followed me around. And again, if I bring up the part where we're talking again, this was another section where I'm asking you to throw it down. Now, this was incredibly challenging. All the stuff that I did, well, I shouldn't say all, 90% of what I actually did was using autofocus. And the camera never missed a beat. It was incredible. And this is why I'm saying I'm really tempted to sort of rethink how I'm shooting things. And, you know, if I'm starting to shoot anything with autofocus particularly, I may tend to go this, but I am going to give a full talk on this, so I'm going to give a full talk to sort of talk about how it went and things like that. Manual focus was amazing with the, you know, with your outlines that you can get around the image when you're looking at it, your focus peaking, but it was just amazing. So I just wanted to sort of take you through that, but, you know, if you haven't watched those, I'd love you to watch them and put in the comments what you think about those videos, because really, like I said, very few people are using the A9 for video. They're mostly using it for stills. And after using it the way that I did, I think it's a very, very underrated camera. Low light was incredible. But like I said, I'm going to talk about this fully in another video with you guys. So let me know what you think about it. Anyway, so have a look at those videos and let me know what you think. Let me just bring back these questions. Just saying hi to a few people. We're going to start in a minute or so, guys. Just letting other people pop in. Who else have we got? Stuart said hi. Mike said hi. David Johnson said hello. Rick Mentone, hi Rick. Roy's here as well. Video Master said, many times I've used the A6500 in auto for the video quality, and the quality is amazing, so I'm sure the A9 is great without profiles. And that's the thing that shocked me the most about using the A9 was I just used the standard profile when I was actually shooting, and it's stunning straight out of the camera. I had to do so little to those images. The low light was incredible, and like I said, the focus was just insane. It was nailing people coming in on boats and parachutes that were coming over me, and never lost focus once. I just can't explain how well it actually went. Mark is here, fingers crossed for the A7III. We're going to talk about that in a second, Marco. Dave Clark said the calibration of the web camera is off. For some reason, your shirt is coming across as pink. It's not pink, David. It's salmon. You know what I said to Kerry? I laughed when I was picking out this to wear. I said it's pink, and Kerry said it's not pink, David. It's salmon. So, David, you're wrong. It's salmon. Oh, I love it. You guys crack me up. All right, well, I'm going to go to the A7RIII Images logo, and then we're going to start. So bear with me just for a second, guys. G'day everyone. Noticed a lot of people are now watching, so it's great to have you all back after my holidays. I did spend 2 weeks in Phuket, and if you've been following me, if you are actually following my YouTube channel, you'll notice that I did post a number of videos just to keep you guys up to date on what I was doing. I have also posted a couple of videos using the A9, and my trick, or the thing this time was, usually when I've travelled, and I have posted a couple of videos about that, I have just used the A6500 or the A6300 with a couple of lenses. This time I decided definitely to go with the A9 just to try it, to see how it worked as a vlogging camera and things like that. And I have to say it's amazing. I'm going to put up another video about that very soon, and I'm going to talk about that. I've got some people talking about the monitor is not calibrated and stuff because they're saying I've got a pink shirt on, and I've just been saying to a few people over here that it's not pink, it's actually salmon. So please, you guys obviously do not know colour, because if you did know colour, you would understand that I am not wearing pink. It is definitely a salmon colour. So please do not comment on the on my pink top. Please say I'm wearing a salmon top. And you have to admit it does match my skin beautifully. I think I look amazing. Oh, God. So we've just had a stack of people saying hi, which I just went through if you're on the pre-show. I'm going to go through a stack of stuff with you today about news and rumours. And I'm also going to talk about the A7III, which hopefully is going to be released on Monday. I'm not drinking a beer today because, to be honest, guys, I'm beered out and alcoholed out over the last 2.5 weeks or whatever on my holidays. I've just had every cocktail known to mankind and also every Thai beer. So I'm detoxing my whole body. So I'm drinking Coke today. No, I haven't had a drink since I got back. I thought, wow, I've got to let my body recover. Now, if you do have any questions, please talk amongst yourselves in the chat. I will come back to you at the end for live questions and stuff like that. So if you have got any questions, please leave at David Osler, so at least I will see it and I'll know that that way I won't miss your question, because I'd love you to ask any questions at all. If you are coming in later on and obviously the live chat's not available to you, leave the questions down below. And I do always answer questions. So unlike a lot of YouTubers that say, please leave questions, and then they never answer them, I always try and make sure that I answer every question that is there. So please, if you have any questions, leave those down below if you're watching later on and I can't answer now. So let's go over to news anyway, because I'm going to bring this up just to have a go through with you guys about the things that are going to happen. So let's have a look. So first thing that I actually wanted to talk to you about was, now Sony Alpha Rumours are still saying that there's going to be an A7III announced on February the 26th. And basically, if you read down here, and I wanted to talk to you about some of these specs too that were here. They're saying they're still not 100% sure, but there's a number of rumours going around that that's what's going to be released. But the chances are increasing that the A7III camera will be released or announced on February the 26th. And then probably it'll be a month before it's released. That's usually how Sony tend to work. It might be a month or so before they actually release the camera after that. It's also saying in there that they doubt... Oh, they're also saying that they think this is the case because a lot of people have been invited to big events in Las Vegas, London and Asia. And I doubt they would do that for an A6000 or an A5300 camera released. It doesn't mean they're not going to release those cameras, but what Sony Alpha Rumours are saying is that they believe that this big announcement that they're sort of talking about, inviting lots and lots of people, is going to be the A7III. Clearly, I don't think it's going to be the A7S3. They must be still having issues with that camera or working around that camera. I'm not quite certain why that camera is taking so long to come out. Perhaps they're trying to get over the overheating using 4K 60p, because I think that's the thing that they have to be releasing with the A7S 3 or whatever they're going to bring out. It might be an A9S, I'm not sure, but they have to probably bring that out with 4K 60p. Therefore, they have to get over overheating. So I think that might be the reason why the A7S3 is still being held back. Now, whether they'll release that at NAB, I'm not sure, but we'll have to wait and see. I think this is C+, that is on Monday. So the rumours actually saying 99% reliable rumours. That Sony announcement is for February the 26th, Las Vegas time. New mid-level entry camera to be announced, and that has to be the A7III. So if they're talking about a mid-level entry camera, it's got to be that one. And they're saying the 60% reliable rumour, the entry-level mid camera is the A7III. So there's different rumours. There are two rumours that they're saying. One is 99% they're saying sure. The other one is 60% sure. Now, they're saying here that this is the specs though. So 35% reliable rumour. Now, whether that means that this will happen or not, I'm not actually sure. But they're saying that it's going to be a 24 megapixel sensor, 7 frames per second, 425 contrast points, 167 phase detection points, and I'll talk to you about this in a minute. They're going to have a joystick. The Z battery is going to be in there. I think that's a must. The touch screen, 4K 24, 25 and 30 frames per second, and 1080p 24, 25, 30 and 60, and it's going to cost, well, around $18.99 US. So let me know in the comments what you think about those specs. Do you think that's good enough, that what Sony are offering for that price range? I'm curious too. Oh, Michael's just donated me $10. Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you. I really appreciate that, mate. Let me know what you think about those specs. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about them, so let's have a look. Just excuse me while I have some Coke, not beer this time. Well, for starters, I think 24 megapixel is definitely the go for this camera, because that seems to be that sweet spot for most of these mid-entry cameras. You know, like even your A700, the A6III, the Fuji cameras that are out there, the previous Sony A7II. All these sort of cameras are all around about that megapixel size. And to be honest, I'm really happy with that. And the amount of times that I use the Sony A9 when I was in Thailand, I am really happy with that file size, and it does give you the ability to crop in more than you think. Obviously, you can't crop in as much as an A7R3 or an A7R2, but you still can crop in quite a lot. And remember, I used to use a D3S, and that was 12 megapixels, and I used to use that for weddings and things like that, and never had a complaint printing posters out and stuff like that. So having a file size of 24 megapixels is enough for most people. And I'm tending to think if you can't afford an A9, this potentially will be the perfect wedding camera and event camera if you can't afford to have that A9 file size. But there's a couple of little things that worry me a little bit about these specs. The 167 phase detection focus points on this camera is nowhere near the amount that you're getting on the A9 and the A7R3. So I think that video focusing on this camera particularly is not going to be very good. It may be okay, but I don't think it's going to be that fantastic. Now, remember, I'm just guessing, so they might completely change this and it might be amazing, but I'm just going by previous cameras and things like that. They've put the contrast detection points at 425 on this camera, so it's got way more than obviously the phase detect points. So that could be an issue that we're going to have to wait and see how the video autofocusing is on this camera. And clearly, they can't give you an A9, so I can understand what Sony are doing here. They're pricing this at $1,900 US, so there's no way they're going to give you an A9 or an A7R3 focusing performance in this camera. That Sony would be silly to do that, because who on earth would go and buy an A9? So, you know, that's one thing I think I can understand why they're doing that. But I think the focusing is probably going to be way better than what the previous A7II was, and I managed to use that in weddings, and it was quite successful. It was a bit hard in low light sometimes, but if you put a very fast lens on there, it wasn't too bad. So I think overall, like I said to you, this could be a perfect B camera, particularly as a second camera for me, shooting weddings where I'm using my A9 and then I want to use this as a second camera. Will I get it? Probably not yet. I'm going to probably wait until the end of the year just to see what else is released with the A7S3 and other things that are coming out. So I'm probably still going to wait, but I think this may be a perfect camera if you can't afford the A9, a perfect camera for events and things like that. Obviously, the Z battery has to go in it. That's obviously the main change for me, is the battery life now is incredible. I'm usually only going through 1 battery per wedding now, which is just astounding. I occasionally have to change the battery, but it's usually well into the reception just before I finish, to be honest. So these Z batteries are way underrated, and I can shoot a whole day with that 1 battery, and I'm sure that's going to be the same with this camera as well. Joystick, I think, is a must now, and I think they're probably going to put that on all of their cameras now that come out. The touch screen, I'm hoping, you never know, they may do a flip out screen or something, but I doubt it. But you never know, they may improve the touch screen, for instance. But I'm finding I'm using the touch screen more and more. I used that touch screen so much when I was in Thailand. I really love it, to be honest, and not many people talk about it, but it is such a great feature for racking focus and things like that, or even just making sure your focus is in the perfect spot. And I used it all the time, and I found it such a useful thing to have. So if they give you a similar feature in this camera, that's again another great feature that they're adding in there. 4K recording is probably only going to be limited to 24 and 25 and 30p at 4K. And I'm not sure about the time limit. It probably will be 30 minutes. There's still issues with trying to get 4K 60p recording. If you notice, the new Fuji that was just announced that everyone's raving about only has a 15-minute recording limit, and they don't give you a 60p recording. If you record on your normal 24-30p on that camera, 4K, you get 15 minutes. So clearly there's still overheating issues, and I believe as well that you can't even use zebras on that camera if you're doing the 4K either, because it will overheat. So there's issues still with overheating on these cameras and how much they're pushing them. So I don't expect to see this camera get above those 24, 25, 30 frames per second in 4K, and they probably will give you that 30-minute recording limit. Anything more than that, I think we're going to have to wait for the A7S III. And that's clearly why I think that's taking so long. I think they're trying to get over that overheating. There's obviously got to be a reason why, but talk about that in the chat and I'll come back with you a little bit later on. I'm still not discounting that the A6-7100 will be released soon. It could be dropped anytime by Sony. Sony Alpha Rumours never picked when the A6500 was going to come out last time. It was out of the blue, basically, so that could happen again, and that may be even announced here as well. You just never know which way Sony are going to go. They may want to answer the Fuji, because remember, the A7... I don't believe the A7 III is in competition with the Fuji that's just announced, the XH1 or whatever it's called. That's more really a direct competitor of the A6500. So I think Sony is probably going to have to answer that fairly soon. So we're going to see that reasonably soon, and I'm just hoping things like a flip-out screen and 4K 60p are given with that camera. Even if, like I've said to you before, even if it's only 5 minutes, 3 minutes, I'd be still tickled pink if they gave us that ability. Whether they will or not, we'll have to wait and see. Noise, I'd be surprised if it hasn't been improved over the A7 II. I would definitely think that the noise probably will be improved. But overall, I think this is going to be a great release for Sony. A lot of people are hanging out waiting for this. Looking at those specs, if that's the case, if it's in a similar body to the A9, they're just ergonomics that are so much better. The battery obviously is so much better. The touchscreen is going to be a great feature. Like I said, there's just a few things that we have to still wait on, which is the focus and things like that. The 7 frames per second does not bother me at all in that camera. I think they probably will keep it to around about that because they can't compete with the A9. But let me know in the comments what you think about that, guys, because I'd be curious to know. All right, so let's look at another story that Sony have just announced during the week. They've announced that basically it's a global shutter. Now, I think it's only it's a 1.46 megapixel shutter at this stage, so it's clearly nowhere near enough yet for high-end digital cameras. But Panasonic just announced one too that can do 8K, I think, footage. But clearly, this is the way of the future. It's only a matter of time until Sony release a global shutter. Now, when the main difference with a global shutter is rolling shutter. Basically, what it will do, it stops any rolling shutter at all. Now, this picture that they're showing here, it's saying, a photo showing rolling shutter distortions in a rapidly spinning aeroplane propeller. So you can see here what's happening. The propeller is just basically doing all weird things, and that's due to the sensor itself, the way that it works. If you had a rolling shutter, everything is done at once. You can see here that you know, the blades are all leaving and things like that. And there's a whole article here about talking about what this will do. Basically, it gives you the ability to get rid of rolling shutter completely, I believe. So it's only a matter of time before they release these, and obviously Sony making the sensor, we're in the forefront again. So future cameras, maybe, you know, 1-2 years down the track, are going to have this feature. This could be fantastic in something like an A7RIII or something like that. Having a global shutter released in the cameras would make a world of difference if you're shooting with the electronic shutter particularly. The A9 has the best rolling shutter I've ever seen. Particularly, I'm just going to show you a photo because I wanted to show you this, and I will show it when I'm going through my A9 discussion. Did I bring it up? Yes, I did here. Let me just come back to here. This image was shot with the A9, obviously. But I panned incredibly fast. I was on electronic shutter for the whole time. I never used mechanical shutter because I never took a flash. I panned with the camera really fast here to get the bike rider. And you can see that the bike rider is dead on, and he was going pretty quick. And there's no rolling shutter here, no distortions or anything. So the A9 is really fast with its shutter. And that's one of the advantages of using the A9 over, say, the A7R III and electronic shutter and other cameras, that there is no real rolling shutter with the A9. So this is a really good technology, and I can't wait to see this come out in the future. It's a backside illuminated sensor. And it says in here that it's the first ever CMOS sensor over 1 megapixel that has both back illumination and a global shutter. And it's saying basically it gets rid of distortion. I'll put this in the links down below so you can have a read of the whole article. I'm not going to go through it all now with you guys. But let me know too in the chat what you think about that. Next story is this. Sony have announced a new flash. I'm just going to have a quick drink, guys. The HVL F60RM. Now, I believe Sony are going to keep the other flash, HLV F60, I think it is, which is what I've got. I've got 3 of those. Sony apparently are going to keep those as well. The main difference between the flash I've got and this flash is that the receiver is built into this. So if you had 2 of them, you don't need to buy a receiver. If you only have 1 and you want to use off-camera flash, you do have to buy the Sony receiver. So that's another thing to keep in mind. So you'd need, I don't know if it has the receiver here. No. It's not showing it. Anyway, it's $5.99. Now, I have to say, I'm not certain whether just let me minimize this for a second. I'm not 100% sure that if I was buying again now, like nearly all my gear is Sony. Nearly all of my gear that I use is Sony because I need it to be able to be fixed very quickly. But to be honest, I don't think I've ever had a problem with a flash. I've never had a problem apart from one time when I dropped the camera down and the mount broke down the bottom and I had to get it fixed. That wasn't the problem of the unit, it was the problem of me breaking it. And plus, that's, like I said to you before, that's the one weakness of Sony is the hot shoe mounts usually are never strong enough. But to be totally honest, I think if I was going to buy flashes now, this may be one thing that I wouldn't be buying anymore. I'd probably go Godox or something like that to be purchasing flashes now because they're so much cheaper than what you're going to be paying for these Sony receivers. And I believe the Godox also have the receivers built in as well, but way cheaper. You could probably buy 2 of those for the price you're going to pay for 1 of these. So I'm not sure if you can justify paying the amount that Sony are asking for these flashes. Let me know in the live chat, and when we come back to that, I'll discuss that with you. Like I said, I've got 3 of the older versions, and they cost me, I think, Australian dollars. It was about $800 each. They were ridiculously expensive, but that's how much you paid. I bought them 2 years ago. They've never let me down, though. They're fantastic, but probably Godox flashes wouldn't let you down either. So I don't know if I could justify saying to anyone, yes, go for the Sony flashes over something like Godox. But let me know in the chat what you guys think about that. Am I jumping the gun? Should I be saying to people, yeah, go the Sony way, or do you guys think that you would just go Godox? And if you're dropping into this discussion later on, let me know down in the chat down below to have a discussion there as well, because I'd love to know what you guys think about that. But, you know, I just don't think that it's worth paying that much for a flash that's just going to sit on top. I mean, if you're getting an off-camera flash, yes, maybe, but not for just a on-camera flash. I just don't think it's worth that type of money anymore. And I think Sony probably should have priced that way down on what it is. But let me know in the discussion what you think about that, guys, because I'd love to know. One other thing too, I just wanted to bring this to your attention. If you do have an A7R III, there was a breakdown saying how great the weather sealing is. And the interesting thing is here that they're actually saying in this description that the extensive weather sealing is as good as any camera I have seen. So clearly, Sony have done an amazing job on the weather sealing of this camera, apart from the bottom, which they said is terrible. And the only reason I'm mentioning this to you is that if you, say for instance, we're working in a wet environment, now normally it's not going to be an issue because rain is going to come down from the top. So if you're going to deal with this type of issue, rain is going to come down from the top and probably just drip off, and you're not going to have an issue with it. But if you did want to sit it down onto a wet table or something, or if you were shooting, and I do things like this sometimes, I'll just put the gear down as I'm going to try and do something. You'd have to be very careful, obviously, because the weather sealing at the bottom of this is not very good, particularly if you do go into water. Now, sometimes I do that. Sometimes I'll often do surf shoots with models and things like that in the surf, and I will go into the water. That's somewhere where you would have to be careful because the water could come and lap and hit the bottom. So that's a game where it might be an issue. So if you are dealing with that type of scenario with the A7III, it might be good to put like they're saying, put some tape on it or something might be a good idea around the bottom if you're going to be working in that type of environment, or a plastic bag or something like that, just to protect the bottom. So I just wanted to bring that to you. I'm not saying the weather sealing is not good, but it's just something to be aware of if you're dealing with that camera. Now, in lens news, Tamron have said, or they've released a 28-75 FE. I believe you can pre-order it now on B&H, and it's basically what they're saying is that it's aimed to match the 2470 GM quality. Now, whether they can back that up in actual quality remains to be seen. If they can do that, though, that's going to be a pretty amazing feat. But the 28-75 is quite a good focal length. But are they saying price? I think it was about $1,400 or $1,500, I think. I saw somewhere in a post. Let me know in the comment box, guys, a live chat if you know of the price for that camera, because I did see somewhere this of that lens. I did see somewhere this morning where they were talking about the price of that, and it was way cheaper than what the GM lens is. But like I said, for me, I always like using the Sony gear, but if you can't afford the Sony gear, this may be a great lens for you to use. But once again, other manufacturers now are starting to come on board, and clearly this is just going to keep growing and growing. So the people that say Sony have no lenses, come on, guys. I mean, you just can't say that anymore. So that's now released. They're saying it's aimed to compete with the 2470 GM. They aimed to lower the price point near the 2470Z. So, oh, that is interesting. They would ship it out as early as the end of April, no later than May. Might vary, depend on the region. Brand new design, not directly from the old 2875 2.8 from the Nikon mount, because that's already been out for a while. And it's just saying this lens should be designed with the hope to feed the A7R2R3 sensor. So it might mean it's able to resolve 40 megapixels plus. Sounds fantastic. So we'll all wait and see what the reviews are like when that comes out. But clearly it's another thing that you can now put on your Sony camera. Another lens this morning as well I heard about was the new Tokina 20mm f2 FE autofocus lens was officially announced. And again, I don't think they're saying the price of what this is. Does it say anywhere? No, I don't think they're giving prices on that too. But it sounds like a really nice lens. I think they're saying it's going to be released April 2018, tentative in Japan, and worldwide May 2018, tentative as well. But it's probably going to be a lovely lens. F2 for a 20mm lens is quite good. I mean, great actually. I don't know how big this is and stuff like that, but it's saying it goes from F2 to F22. But another lens that's basically out there now. So we've got stacks now coming up, open. Now let's have a look at this too, because I wanted to just discuss this with you. This was an interesting story that I saw the other day. This couple is suing a wedding photographer because they claim that he focused on the bridesmaids' bodies. And if you look down, I think, oh no, these are the photos that were submitted to the bride and groom, I believe, and so obviously they're now being sued. I think, honestly, some of the things that people were saying, and they said the images were out of focus and stuff like that. Once again, I keep seeing all the time people hiring these photographers, and clearly, did they check out this guy's work beforehand? I mean, did he have a following? I just laugh when I see these things that people sue people like that, but what was his original work like? They probably didn't even check. So it's interesting to see, though, that you keep seeing these things popping up. And lastly, before we go on to the live discussion questions, this is really interesting because if you're like me, I'm going to grab the bag because I'll show you how many batteries I carry. So this is my batteries that I carry. Now, to be honest, it's way more than what I need because I just bought them over time, and I used to have multiple things with lights and stuff like that, and it doesn't take long for me as a wedding photographer to use these, especially when I'm doing video with because of lighting and stuff like that. Like the Zoom H1 that I have has 4 batteries that I need. My Neo Roto lights have 6 in each one, and I've got 3 of those. So, that all adds up, and I have to have enough to replace them in case if one dies. So, it's really interesting. So I've got multiple things that I change. My flash units always have 4 batteries in each flash unit, and then the remote has 2, and then the remotes that fit onto the flash units have 2. So you'd be surprised how much these batteries add up. So even though it looks like I've got a crazy amount of batteries, and to be honest, these are my favorite ones. These, I'll just bring it up closer so you can see it. See if it'll focus. They're the Eneloop Pros. They're my favorite ones. Now, they have a rating, I think, what was the rating on that? It's still only 2450, but these tend to last a hell of a lot longer than what the normal Eneloops, these type ones do, or there's the white ones. These are the same as the white ones, but they're just you can just get them in color sometimes. The Eneloop Pros I've found tend to last longer than anything, but if they're talking about general batteries, those Pros last for ages. So if I'm dealing with something like the Neo Roto lights or something like that, I'll use the Eneloop Pros in because they tend to last a lot longer than what the normal Eneloops last. But this is an interesting article because basically, this is a test, and like I said, I'll leave this in the description down below for you so you can have a look yourselves. But they're saying, are the $5 IKEA, and you guys in the US have IKEA as well, I believe, is the IKEA LADDA batteries identical to the $20 Eneloop Pro batteries? And I think they're talking about, see, these ones. So they're actually saying the Pro ones. And this whole article does a discussion about that. Oh yeah, there you go. It is showing the Pro one. Yeah, so it's not even the normal Eneloop ones. So what's the rating on the normal ones? I'm just trying to see what the... Oh yeah, they're 1900 on those ones. I'll just bring this up so you can see. So these normal Eneloop ones are 1900 on the power rating, where these are 2400. So yeah, they're definitely more capacity than what these Eneloop ones are. But reading this article, that there's no difference. And that's the really interesting thing about this. So it's $5 a pack of those, and it's $20 for a pack of 4 of the Eneloop Pros. But all of this guy's testing says that there's only 0.05% difference in performance between the two batteries. So they're saying, statistically speaking, they are extremely likely to be the same battery based on these tests, he concludes. Because I think what he's saying back here is they're both made in Tasaki, I think it is, excuse me, in Japan. So they're made in the same place. So they probably are the same batteries. So if you can, what I'm saying to you is you might want to go to Aldi and pick up some of these LADDA batteries. You can see here that says they're both made in Tasaki, Japan. They're $5 for the 4 here, and they're $20 for the, I suppose that's US, $20 US for those ones, and it's saying down here that there's only 0.05% difference between the two batteries. So, you know, that's incredible. So I'm going to try these. I don't need any at the moment, but I may just buy some so I've got some saved if I can get them, just in case if they disappear from Aldi or something, or they change their maker or where they're bought from. So I might get some of those batteries to put away to save in case if I need them later on. They're both rated at 2,450, and I think that one was 2,450 as well, wasn't it? Yep, 2,450. So they're both rated as the same amount of power. So I just thought I'd bring that up to you, that might be the best buy that you can get at the moment, is go and stock up on those in case if they disappear and use a different maker or something like that. But at the moment, it looks like they're the same brand as the Eneloop Pro brand. So let me know what you think about that. I think that's pretty cool, to be honest. All right, so let's go to questions, because I'm going to bring those up and we'll have a chat and I'll answer any questions that you guys have. So I'm going to scroll back. And let me get rid of that. So fire away any questions, guys. If you want to ask anything, just if you can put at David Osler, so that at least I can see it in the questions down there. Most people are just saying hi at the moment. Video Master was saying here, many times I've used the A6500 on auto. He's talking about auto for the video, the autofocus. I was discussing that because I was saying earlier how fantastic the A9 went, and I'm really starting to believe that it's a completely underrated video camera, to be honest. That camera is incredible, and I'm going to put a review about my trip to Thailand to talk about that shortly. And I'm really starting to think that I might use it more for my videos. But I'll talk about that in an upcoming video. So if you haven't watched my last 2 videos, please watch them. The one with the A9 in Thailand, and there's also a video in the A9 in Thailand. Have a look at both of those. Mel's just saying hi. Some people are criticising my top, which calling it pink, and I'm saying it's not pink, it's salmon. It's definitely salmon, guys. What are you talking about? I wouldn't wear a pink top. Because they're saying the calibration's off on my monitor. I love it. Roy said, have you tried the 24-105 f4G lens yet in light of travel photography on your A9? No, I haven't, Roy. And it probably is something that I may get down the line. To be honest, I tend to use primes nearly all of the time now. But it may be something that I would consider getting in the future for travel, because that would be a great all-around travel lens, and then perhaps I could just take one low-light lens like my 35 f1.4 with me or something like that. You know, and I could probably take then just the 2 lenses away with me, and it's similar to like what I do with my A6500 in the fact that when I go traveling with that, I take the 18-105 and also then the 24 1.8 to give me the low light part to that, and I can travel with those 2 lenses. So that could be something that I may travel in the future with the A9, is a 24-105, which I've heard nothing but good things about, and say the 35 1.4. And I think f4 doesn't bother me at all. Like, having f4 as a lens does not bother me at all, because you really can up the ISOs now and be very clean. I was really pumping the ISO up when I was in Thailand, and the images do look incredibly nice. So, you know, I haven't got an issue with upping the ISO. Remember, for me or anyone, The image is the important thing, getting the image. It's not whether that image looks fantastic, sharp, whatever. It's to actually just get the image. That's the most important thing. Don't worry about noise and stuff like that. If most cameras nowadays, particularly the Sonys, can handle ISOs, you know, well up 32. I often use 6400 higher with the latest cameras that I've got. And they're really quite good. The thing that I can tell you is the only important thing is that you expose correctly. You have to expose a little bit to the right. So you're a little overexposed just a little bit. If you underexpose, it's basically going to... I always get confused if it's right or left. But if you underexpose, that's where you'll get noise in. You're better off to go a little bit higher in your exposure. Or nail your exposure spot on. If you nail your exposure spot on, you really will be surprised how high you can drag up these cameras. The problem is if you underexpose and then try and bring that back up and it's very low light, it becomes very noisy, and that's the issue. Because remember, the noise is only going to be in the shadows, so they're things that you've got to consider. Mel said, in the early days we didn't have profiles, did the 50 to 60 videos with events with standard settings. Flat profiles are mostly good for indie films or if you need to control dynamic range. Yeah, and they are, Mel. And look, I do use flat profiles sometimes for weddings, sometimes because if a bride is in the light and then you also have a part light, part shade, the dynamic range gives you much more area to improve on. But to be honest, the amount of editing that you've got to start doing when you shoot flat, it then becomes so hard to do. I can do it now because I'm quite experienced, but still the amount of work that's required is really tedious. And to be honest, most of the time now I'm not shooting with flat profiles, even on the A7R II and the A6500. I'm often using just the standard profiles now. I do often use Cin 4, so that would be a real nice thing if it was put onto the A9, but I can get by with a standard profile, and I proved that with the shots that I just did in Thailand. I'm really happy with how it actually performed, so I don't think it's such a big deal as what I used to believe, to be honest. Richard saying, hi, Michael gave me a $10 donation. Thank you so much, Michael. I really appreciate that. David said, what a way to make an entrance. Coke rots the gut, Roy said. I know, it's terrible. I should be drinking the beer probably, shouldn't I? David said, just odd that it has more contrast points than phase detection points. And that may be because of low light, perhaps, David. I'm not quite certain. Remember, your contrast points do come more into effect for your low light focusing. So that could be the reason why it's got more contrast than you know, other focusing methods. What else have we got? Trying to see if those specs can compete with the A6300. You're talking about the A7 III. Look, it'll definitely be a better camera than the A6300 and the A6500, I think, Gene. I mean, it's much later, but that's not to say probably the A6700 will blow this out of the water again. I mean, you just don't know. I sold my A7IIs. I sold them a while ago because I just wasn't using them anymore. I'm quite comfortable using the A7R II, the A9 and the A6500 and the A6300. I got rid of the A7IIs a while ago. Rick said, so if you were to make a new A7 III, what spec would you give it for $2,000? Well, to be totally honest, Rick, I think I'm pretty comfortable with that. The only thing that the phase detector is the only thing that worries me about that camera at this stage. But remember, these are all specs we don't know how they're going to work yet. We're all on speculation and rumours. So it might work fantastic out of the box on that. I'm thinking probably for the price, that's going to be an amazing camera. If Sony can bring that in at $1,800, $1,900, I think that's a great camera with those specs that it had. So it's going to be interesting to see how it fits in the whole range of what Sony's got to offer. Like I said, if you can't afford an A9, I do think this is probably going to be one of the best wedding cameras out there. It's still full frame, and it probably will work amazing. I just hope that it has the dual card slots, and the people aren't mentioning that. That could be one thing that would put me off, because I really don't want to go back to having just single card slots now, because they didn't mention that, did they, in the story? Just let me go back, and I don't think that was mentioned. No, it wasn't mentioned. So I'm not sure that could be a ball breaker for me. If it didn't have the dual card slots, I don't think I'd be interested in going towards that anymore. I really do like having the dual card slots. I used to say, well, I've never had a card fail, and I never have. But since I've been working with the A9 and the GH5, it is a comfort knowing if something happened. And remember, I recently did... Oh, no, I have had a card fail. I had the Sony one that failed recently that I was using in my A9. Luckily, the images were protected. I could get JPEG off the other card. So it did save me. It wasn't a wedding, but it was still a paid shoot. And I was saved by having that second card. So I don't think I'll be interested in going back to get a new camera without two cards. Now, the only camera I say I would get that would be the A6500 and then, but probably won't give you dual cards in that camera because of its form factor, and I probably will buy that camera, the A6700. But yeah, if that didn't have, the A7III didn't have dual card slots, I wouldn't buy it, but that's just me. Video Master said autofocus on the A6500 is fantastic, so long as it's as good as that, I'm happy. And yeah, and you're right. I am very happy with the A6500 focus. Like I said, the best focus I've ever used in my life was the A9 that I've used, and I'm still astounded by how well that focuses. It's just ridiculous. I mean, those parachutes were coming past me that fast, bikes, everything, and I could track everything that was going past me in video. As well as stills. It's just astounding. So yeah, you're right, Video Master. If it has as good a focus as the A6500, that's going to be a great camera. But like I said, just thinking about that now, the dual ports worries me. I hope they are going to include that. What else have we got? Mel said, if the A6300 and the A6500 is good enough for weddings, if it has the same AF engine, then it should be as good. Fewer focusing points mean not only being able to cover the entire frame. And yeah, you're right, it might be more concentrated, just more in the center. That's what I love about the A9 so much, is that it covers the whole sensor. But, you know, not everyone can afford an A9, so it may be fantastic. And you're right, perhaps they'll concentrate that more towards the center, Mel, and you could be right. I want one. I want to get one. I love the 24 megapixels. So do I, Richard. It's my favorite amount of megapixels to use. It's just like shooting weddings with the A7R2 used to drive me nuts. I very rarely did it because the file sizes were just ridiculous over a whole wedding. 24 megapixels is perfect for that file size. Now remember, I said there's no perfect camera. If you're dealing with landscape, if you're dealing with just shooting portraits in studio or something like that, you would want to use the A7R2 or the A7R III. If you're dealing with events, like travel, stuff like I just did and stuff like that, I think that the 24 megapixels is more than enough, more than enough. I'm De Brown's here. G'day, mate. How you going? Michael said he likes that flash. Would you think about buying the flash, Michael? What are you using at the moment? I'm just curious to know. Are you using Sony flashes like me, or are you using Godox for your flashes? Just let me know. David Johnson said, good to see you, soul brother. Oh, that's talking about Iron Brown. HL, it's overpriced. And that's what I'm thinking. A lot of people are going to think it's overpriced compared to something like Godox, something like that. But yeah, we'll see what happens, guys. Like I said, I think if I was buying new flashes, I may not buy the Sony one. I may just get Godox. But my Sony flashes have never let me down, never overheated. They've been fantastic. Gerald said, this new 60RM has better heat properties. The early 60 was prone to overheat. Gerald, that was true before they did the firmware update. The flashes that I had already got the firmware updated, and I've never had my flashes overheat. And I use them a lot in weddings and events, and they've never overheated for me. So I don't think that's true for most of the Sony flashes. It was only the earlier ones. If you had that latest update, it was fixed, and you can send the flashes off if you have those earlier flashes to Sony. You can't update the flash yourself. You've got to send it off to Sony for them to fix it, but they can put that latest firmware into your flash. Mike said, yes, the Godox flashes all have built-in receivers, that is, and you can buy 3 equivalent ones with lithium battery for the price of the Sony. See, that's the hard part to justify. Like I said, if you're dealing with off-camera flash, then yes, I can understand paying a little bit more. But when it's for your on-camera flash, that's a lot to ask to pay for on-camera work, which really, if you're dealing with on-camera flash, it's just for quick type work for events, stuff like that. The second that I'm doing really like important page shoots and stuff like that, I'm using off-camera flashes. I'm not using these Sony on-camera flashes. Remember, the light's too small. You're dealing with a very small head as against, you know, large heads that the big flash strobes can use. So yeah, it is a lot of money. And like I said, I probably wouldn't buy the Sony ones again. I'd probably give the Godox a go, and then I'll probably regret it. But I don't know. I'm just sort of saying what I think I would get. David, you can actually buy 3 of the Godox V862s for the price of 1 Sony flash. So it's a lot if you're saying you can buy 3 of them. Remember, 1 on-camera flash is never enough. You always really need 2 or 3. And that's the thing, so you've got to be careful about that. So if you are going to buy a number of these, you are going to have to buy more than 1. Because really, you shouldn't just be using the flash on the camera. You should be taking it off the camera. And then to do that, you need your transmitters and everything else. So it does get very expensive if you're dealing with a Sony. Yeah. They're $120 during Black Friday, so it's $120, is it? Yeah, so it's incredibly cheap when you think about the price that they are. I don't know how, I wonder what the flash output power is with the Godoxes related to the Sonys. Rick said most pros use flash on manual, so the wireless link for TTL reading is just about useless. Yet true. The thing is though, Rick, I always use TTL for an initial exposure, and it's just such a quick thing to do. I like to basically use the flash, get a TTL exposure. That gives you a base exposure, and then I'll immediately put it onto manual. If you stay in TTL, it can cause big issues in the fact that things vary too much. If you move around a little bit, things like that, it can change. If you move back and forwards, things can change. If you leave it in manual, everything stays the same, so you can move around and everything. The only thing you have to make sure of is the light to the subject distance doesn't change. So that's something you've got to consider. So I wouldn't say that TTL is useless. I think it's very useful as a way of getting initial exposure. And plus, sometimes if I've been run and gun, and occasionally I've had to do that, I will use TTL to get run and gun exposures, and then just use flash compensation to go up and down. So I think there is a use for it, but most of the time I do shoot manual, yes, after I've had the TTL to get the initial exposure. Gene says, Godox flashes are fantastic. I just tend to shoot more with the LED like the Rotolight Neo. Like I said, I've got Rotolight Neos, but I don't tend to use them much at all. I prefer to use flash, but that's just a personal thing. I like to basically have a lot more power than what the Neos can give me. And to be honest, I love the Neos, but I still prefer the iSlide a little bit more if you're dealing with continuous light, but that's just me. Yes, Godox flash are better. You can buy 3 Godox for the price of one of these Sony strobes. So he's saying they also have a lithium batteries built in for 600 flashes. Big difference. I think you get 200 flashes off the Sony one. Rick said, I use 3 to 4 Godox flashes for dance floor with a new wireless trigger, so good for the price of one Sony. And Gerald said, in the US, the Godox flash point are $179 for full lithium, HSS, TTL, and built-in receiver versus $598 for the Sony. Yeah, I know. I can see what you're saying. It's hard to justify. Saw that lens for $799. Wow, that's really cheap. You're talking about the 28 to 75? Is that the one, Rick, you're talking about? Oh no, 1,100 for the Tokina. That's so cheap. If they're saying that lens is going to be comparable to the G Master, but let's wait and see if it is. If that is comparable to the G Master, that's amazing value. And they're saying that it takes regular filters as well. These Sony flashes still won't take lithium batteries. They overheat and need external battery pack for top performance. I haven't had them overheat though, Gerald, so I honestly have not had an issue with my things at all. I'm just laughing at Michael say, what the F he's talking about. It is a makeup bag, Michael. You could do weightlifting with this thing. There's so many batteries. But like I said, you've got to understand that when I'm doing fusion, I'm using so many batteries in a full day that you wouldn't believe it. There's not many left. And at the moment, this pack, everything that I've got packed away hasn't got the batteries in it because I don't like to leave the batteries in it. As soon as I come back from a wedding, I'll recharge them and they're sitting here charged. And these batteries will stay charged for 12 months. So they're all ready to go for the next shoot. But like I said, you've got to remember that if I'm using Neo roto lights, there's 6 batteries in each one, and I have to take a separate lot in case of, you know, that one runs out, you know, and it all adds up. 4 batteries in each of my flash units, and I've got 3 of those. And then the wireless receivers and transmitters, they all take batteries. So you'd be surprised, I nearly use all of them. It is a makeup bag though, yes. Battery junkyard, I love it. I thought that pink was for... It's not pink, Roy, it's salmon. This is not pink, it's salmon. I love you guys. Kerry gave Dave her old makeup bag. She did, David, and that's where I got that from. Jean said, how many of those AA batteries can you take on a plane? I'm using... well, I've taken stacks. I just put them in my bag, and I've never had anyone say that I've got too many. I wouldn't take that many, though, when I go on a shoot on a plane, though. I tend to just take enough, because remember, I have to minimise what I take when I'm going on a plane. But as long as I take them on carry-on, I've never had an issue. Michael said, fashionable batteries matches your top. Are you talking about these... You're talking about these pink batteries. That's pink. Look, there's a difference. Look. This is salmon, Michael. Salmon. You guys. I don't think those batteries are in the States. Don't you have... What is that? You'd have these, though, wouldn't you? Tony? You'd have those, wouldn't you? So you don't have the... ones from IKEA in the States. And that's interesting. I'll have to check if we have them in Australia. If we do, I'm going to get a stack of them. We do have IKEAs throughout the US, and they do carry these. Well, there you go. Gerald said they do have them. I use Amazon batteries. Supposedly they are in rebanded Eneloops, and they're probably all the same. AiRIII, how much were the Amazon batteries, though? Were they a similar price to the IKEA ones? I'm just curious to know what price they had. Let us know. Gene said an alternative to the Tokina would be the ultra-wide converter for the 28 f2. The problem is, as soon as you use the converter, it's no longer the f2 lens, though, is it? Are you saying it goes to 2.8 and it's 21? I just don't like using converters that much, Gene. So it becomes an issue. You've got to carry another thing around with you, and I'm sure that you probably lose a little bit of quality. I mean, I can't say because that's Sony, but I would be surprised if there's not a little hit in quality. But if you've got it, let us know what you think about that. I'd just be curious to know. Harold has said he's trading my A7RIII for an A7S Mark I. Thoughts? I don't know. I don't think I'd do it. Personally, there's nothing wrong with the A7RIII, and the focus on the A7RIII is way better than the autofocus, is way better than the A7S Mark I. I probably wouldn't do it, Harold. I'd keep the A7RIII over that, unless you're shooting in incredibly dark environments. I often use my A7RIII on a gimbal, and I love it. Remember, the A7RIII and the A6500 is the same video quality and the same stills quality. There's no difference. It's just that it doesn't have stabilization. And the touchscreen on the back is really the only difference. And the buffer is a little bit faster, well, way faster on the A6500. But I personally would not be selling the A7RIII for an A7S, but that's my opinion. I think that's just too old now. Video Master, you'd fit right all over Los Angeles with that shirt. Guys, don't you wear salmon in the US? I can't believe you're so upset about the salmon. It's salmon. It's not pink. Gerald said, I love the 24105 f4. I've heard nothing but good reports about that. Tony said, yes, I agree, it's to die for. Michael said, David keeps saying the A9 has the best video of any mirrorless for sure. David, I keep saying the A9 has the best video for any mirrorless for sure. When exposed right, it's beautiful without even S-Log profiles. It comes out, the camera ready to go. I agree, Michael. And the footage that I got from Thailand with that camera is incredible. I'm so happy with how it performed. It's beautiful. And like I said, I'm going to give a talk about that shortly. Ben's here. G'day. Ben's also going, nice shirt. What's wrong with the shirt, Ben? You're Aussie. You should realise that this is salmon. It's not pink. I've got a similar salmon shirt in Edinburgh, Scotland last June. I get compliments on it. Thank you, Gerald. See? And Gerald has admitted that it's a salmon shirt. Michael said, David, are you going to WPPI next week? Not unless I'm flying to the US, Michael. No. Are you going? I am going to go to WPPI, and I'm actually thinking that I may go next year. So I may go next year to see that, because I'm dying to see you guys in the US, and I want to have a meetup with a lot of you. So I'm thinking about coming to the US next year for something, and it may be WPPI or NAB or something like that, because then I can claim it on tax. So I'm thinking about definitely doing that next year. David Johnson said, outside of the A7R III, all of the Sony cameras have had more phase detection than contrast points. I know, and that's the interesting thing about that rumour, David. I'm not quite certain how that's going to go with the A7 III. Rui said, love your videos. Thank you so much. And Rui said, love your salmon coloured T-shirts. See, another person has realised, obviously, I think that's how you pronounce the name. Rui has a correctly calibrated monitor, guys. So if I go back onto the big screen, Rui's monitor is calibrated. All you people, particularly in the US that are talking here now, obviously have uncalibrated monitors, because you're not seeing this as the true colour. So you guys need to calibrate your monitors, guys, because this is clearly salmon. It is not pink. So if you're seeing salmon, you seriously need to calibrate your monitors. What else have we got? Michael said, no, I'm not paying $600 for no flash unless I'm rich. No, but I like it. Yeah, I mean, look, I think it would be a great flash, Michael. And like, I do like the way the flash works. The way it folds is fantastic. The LED lights at the front are fantastic. But like I said, it's way, way over the competition in that price range. So I just don't know if I'd do it. But then I've bought Pro Photo, so I'm a bit of a hypocrite because I haven't got Godox for my other flashes. But I just don't think I'd probably want to spend that much for an on-camera flash anymore. Well, a mono light, yes, $600, but not an actual camera flash. And that's the thing, I agree with you, Michael. I agree totally with that. Mike said, thanks for the tip. I just ordered 8 of those ladder batteries to compare to my Eneloop Pro. I own around 20 of those. I'll report back. Great, that'll be fantastic, Mike. Let us know. Like I said, I think I probably will purchase some of those next time I go to IKEA myself. Snapclick saying hello. Joel said, if you read the Sony release for the new flash, they tout their better heat performance than before, David. Many US fellow pros still have overheating issues. And that's the interesting thing about that, Gerald. And I don't know, well, perhaps I've just got good units. But the funny thing is I've got 3 of them. So it's not like I've just bought one. I've got 3 of them, and I've never had them overheat. And I shoot in 100-degree heat here, and I've never had them go off and overheat, any of them. So I can only go by my experience and tell you that I haven't had overheating issues with that. I did read early on, and when I first bought them, I thought, oh no, I'm reading about all these overheating issues. But then people said if you get the latest firmware, it doesn't happen. And I haven't had it because I've got the latest firmware. So I can only talk about my history there, Gerald, with running 3 of these Sony flashes. They've never overheated for me. Mel said $18.99 is a good starting price. It puts the 6D2 in a bad spot. It makes one reconsider the G9 or even the GH5 unless video is really important to you. And that's quite a good point. I wouldn't be buying the GH5 just for stills though. I've bought that for video, and I still am amazed at the video that gives me, to be honest. It's not as good as the A9 though. There's no way that video, I reckon, is as good as the A9. Mel said, as for the flash, the Godox is more flexible, has more options, has the X-T1 Master. Cheaper for me, the Sony flash is no longer an option. And that's a good point, Mel. Casper said, Sony, Sony, Sony. Gerald said I had to return Sony 45 strobes. Yeah, well, I've never used those ones. Were they overheating, Gerald? I've never used those ones, so I wouldn't know. I've only got the high-end one. Well, it was the high-end before this new one came out. Mike said the X Pro S triggers are amazing. Rick said, have you ever visited the States? Yes, I've been twice, Rick. I went 2 years ago, where I went to LA and New York. I went to LA, New York, and Vegas. And I went before that when I went to Hawaii at another time and LA as well. So yes, I've been twice, and I'm seriously thinking about coming back next year. Elric said, younger trendy people like salmon colour in the States. See? Like I said, you people seeing pink, get your monitors calibrated. A9 rules. Gasper said, I know, I just love it so much. Carl said, that shirt is fine. Little Blue said, I had salmon for lunch. Mel said, ETTL is a convenience in run and gun situations when you don't have time to set things up in weddings, maybe. That happens a lot, and it does, Mel, and that's the thing. Like I said, I very rarely use TTL or ETL, which way you want to pronounce it. I do use it sometime for run and gun. Like I said, most of the time, though, it's only for me to get a base exposure, and it's fantastic to get a base exposure because it gets you within, you know, well, very, very close. I can probably get it within the next shot. Perfect. So it's great to have that TTL to get you that base exposure and then switch over to manual. Casper said pink. Ben said it's pink. Ben and Casper, you need your monitors calibrated. Clearly, get monitor calibrations. I'm gonna show you guys that are seeing it's pink. I want to show you something. Now, anyone that's seeing pink with this needs one of these. I'll just wait for it to get focus over there. So anyone seeing pink needs one of these. This is the i1 display A7RIII. This is called a color calibration device, and you need to calibrate your monitor. Ben, Casper, you need one of these. So Michael's going to WWPA. It'll be great. I wish I could be going with you, Michael. Also, I love the salmon shirt. Harold's got a calibrated monitor. Casper said the wife said it's pink. That's because you haven't got a calibrated monitor, Casper. That's your problem. Yes, come to New York City for Photo Plus. It's in October. I will be coming to New York if I come back. Definitely, Rick. I want to have a meeting with you guys. Little Blue said pink salmon. Video Master said more than likely that spec rumour is just wrong, and it could be. And I wouldn't be surprised if those specs aren't wrong. I'm hoping for sure that that A7III has 2 card slots, so please put 2 card slots in it, Sony. Women in the US seem to love that. You're talking about the salmon shirt. Any female friends and family love my salmon shirt on me. Love the shirt, David. Thank you. Terry said salmon. Richard said salmon. See, these people all have calibrated monitors, guys. I have the Spider Pro 4 and it's pink. Ben, you obviously have not calibrated it for a while, though. That's why you're seeing pink. Carl Ryan said, I have one, works great. I must have. Oh, dear. All right, guys. Well, that's gone for over an hour again. I can't keep these things down too short. I'm hopeless. I usually want to keep it for an hour, but it's I can never do it. Any last questions before we finish for the day? Like I said, if you haven't given me a thumbs up, please give me a thumbs up. I've only had 16, and there's nearly 50 watching. So please give me a thumbs up if you can. Any questions, leave those down below and I will answer them for you. And obviously, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to my channel. And hopefully I'll be back next week with beer o'clock because I'm missing my beer. I've got to get over this detox. Just the last couple have said here, Gerald Williams said, I'm watching you on a calibrated 4K monitor on my Dell computer and it's salmon. See, Gerald clearly has a great calibrated monitor. Steve Young said, I've used the black Eneloop Pro 1.2 volts as best. The Eneloop is second. The Eneloop AS second is best. Oh, okay, the Pro is best, yeah. But the LA-DDA IKEA bats are the best price. I have both for several years. Okay, so you're saying they're good, Steve. Well, that's interesting. Nice that you say that they're well worth getting. Terry has just said, good to have you back. All right, guys. Well, I think we're... Pink or salmon, you wear it well. Thank you. It's definitely salmon. I'll show you the back just so you can see this shirt. This is a fantastic shirt. Let me just come back so you can see it. Where are we? I love you guys. Seriously. Thanks, David. Respect. See you guys later. Rick, this was the most informative. Keeping fingers crossed. Good news on Monday. Yeah, I hope so. All right, guys. Catch you all soon, and I'll see you all again for the next video. Live, obviously, will be again next week. I will have a video up maybe tomorrow or the next day talking about my A9 for video and stills. So stay tuned for that. Apart from that, I'll catch you all again soon for the next video. Bye for now, guys.